it is recording.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, all. Coincidentally, today is Teachers' Day also. So, teachers play a very important part in reshaping everyone's life. So, I would like to wish you all Happy Teachers' Day. With that, I will come back to title of this talk, demystifying data analytics. So, first question comes to our mind is that why data science, machine learning, artificial intelligence, these keywords are at boom. We are currently in new era. This is the fourth industrial revolution. Few decades ago, digitalization, automation went replacing paper-based processes with computer-based processes. But currently, digitalization of various processes across all industries is happening with goal to not only simplify our lives, but also to achieve things that are considered humanly impossible. The field of data analysis and machine learning are bringing sophistication to products, services, and experiences, as well as solving some of the greatest challenges the world is facing today. For example, in medical field, computer can sort through vast data sets to analyze medical inputs and specify treatment options specific and unique to each patient. Similarly, Google had used artificial intelligence in energy field. Google has used artificial intelligence platform DeepMind to predict when its data centers will get too hot. Then cooling systems are only activated when required. This saved Google 40% in energy cost. In addition to above two examples, there are many other application areas like fraud detection, risk detection, speech recognition, image recognition, efficient route planning, like you must have used Google Map, etc. Some of the major areas where data analysis, machine learning, artificial intelligence is reshaping the world. All this has been only possible because there is so much data available in this ecosystem that is being generated each and every year, and it will only grow from here. Now, you can see data is the new oil. Recently, Mukesh Ambani shifted his perspectives from refining oil, crude oil, to utilizing data. So we can say that data is the new oil. And at the matter of the fact, if you take mirror reflection of geo, it will be oil. So Mukesh Ambani has shifted himself from oil to geo. Uh, and you can also learn this refining process, and by learning this data science, you will have array of opportunities in front of you. You can use it to be job ready. It will set you up for immense success in future. By the way, by being present here in this seminar, you have already taken first step towards it. Now, this process of refining new oil for your specific use case or problem statement at hand is termed as data science. Now, to know more about this refinement, to demystify data science, we, JNV Kolhapur Alumni Association Career Guidance Team, are glad to have world-class data scientists with us. He holds PhD from University of Maryland in Applied Machine Learning. He has worked in multinational conglomerates like IBM, Xerox, Yodlee for 13 years. He was awarded top 10 data scientist in India for year 2017. He built and ran data science team from scratch in Yodlee. By the way, that team was awarded one of the top 10 data science team in India last year. He was also instrumental in winning multi-million dollar data science business deals. In addition to all this industrial experience, he has also very large academic experience. He holds around 50 plus patents, as well as he has published 50 plus papers in international conferences. With that, I ask you all to give your full attention to Dr. Om Dadaji Deshmukh, CEO and co-founder Tilde Hat Online Services. Om, can you talk something about Tilde Hat first or last?
Sure. Hey, Ganesh, thank you, man. That was a very nice and very comprehensive introduction to the topic. I will talk about Tilda Hat to your question. Yes, I will. But I just wanted to appreciate the way you introduced the topic. I couldn't have done a better job. So I'm glad you talked about it. Some of the examples you gave are also very valid, and I'll try and talk about those a little bit. As you were speaking, I was taking notes. The one about Google and, of course, Ambani going from oil to geo, mirror image, obviously very interesting things. And backstage when we were talking to Praveen, he also brought up the career side of it and so on. So all in all, yes, absolutely right that data is seen as the next crude oil, and we need refineries that can, do something with this data. And so what I will try to do in this talk is talk a little bit about, like Ganesh said, or like the title also says, try to demystify what does it mean to be doing data analytics. And within that, what is artificial intelligence, what is data science, what is machine learning, and so on. We'll try to touch upon each of those topics, and then I'll give you some examples of how this is done across different verticals, why it should be done, and so on. uh, I don't think 1 hour will be enough, so I'll try to zip through a few things. I'm always more than happy to talk about any and every topic related to data analytics, be it data science, AI, ML, or job readiness, or so on. Either on my LinkedIn, you can ping me there, or you can just get in touch with Ganesh, and he can help you get in touch with me. Okay, so Ganesh was asking me about what is Tilda Hat, what does it do, and so on. I was thinking I'll talk a little bit about it in the context of who I am, and then towards the end also talk a little bit about what we are doing and so on.
No
Okay,
problem. No problem. You can do that.
right. Okay. So Ganesh already told you all a little bit about who I am and what my journey in data science has been. What I thought I will do is not go over everything that he said, but just contrast two things here. The first piece is, I did quite a lot of deep research in machine learning, which led to patents, PhD, publications, and so on. And then I made a career switch in 2016, which was about 10 years after my PhD, moving from core research where we were inventing new algorithms and so on to actually delivering data science products. And that was a big shift. So that brings a unique perspective towards what I do also, because doing research to come up with new algorithms so that the accuracy is better is a big problem in itself, right? But now taking those research algorithms and actually productionalizing them so that they meet the strict business requirements is a different ball game altogether. Okay. What I mean by that is, let us say this geo example, let's not pick on geo. Let's say any of the service providers, if the service goes down and you call their call center, if the call center guy says की सर पण आम्ही तुम्हाला तर 5G कनेक्शन देत आहोत सर, बाकी सगळे जण 4G देत आहेत, that is not going to be a good answer, right? Because you don't care whether you have 4G or 5G. What you really care is whether your service level agreement was met or not, which means की तुमचा कॉल जो आहे हा ड्रॉप नाही झाला पाहिजे, आणि जर कॉल ड्रॉप झाला तर वारंवार नाही व्हायला पाहिजे, एकदा झाला ठीक आहे यार, काही हरकत नाही, राईट? So that is where technology plays an enabling role, but the service that is provided is actually a end solution, a practical problem that is being solved. So that perspective really was what I learned, in Yodlee, and Ganesh was part of the team. Maybe that's why we won the the top 10 data science team award in 2019. So we had a great team there. We started off with just a couple of people, and then grew it to a very sizable team, had a lot of impact, and so on. So all of those things led to this startup, which is Tilda Hat. And I won't go in the details of what Tilda and Hat stand for. We can discuss that later. But the idea is, it's a deep tech startup which helps in providing jobs, in providing career progression, predictions and prescriptions, and so on. It's not a service; it's a product-oriented thing. So we are working very closely with other service providers, and so on. Okay. By the way, Ganesh, how do we do about the question answers? Should I just stop in between and ask for questions? तुम्ही कसं करता हे सांगा मला, है ना?
I was planning to do it at the end.
ठीक
So
आहे.
whenever someone has any question, they can type that in the chat window, and we will try to address them at the end. Yeah.
अच्छा, चालेल. अच्छा, बरं गणेश, दुसरी गोष्ट इज, आय एम गेसिंग एव्हरीबडी फ्रॉम कोल्हापूर, सो इट्स ओके इफ आय गो इन अँड आउट ऑफ मराठी and make it English Minglish.
Yeah.
Huh?
But I would say 90-10. 10 Marathi and 90 English. That would be better because some are from my IIT friends and they are not Marathi.
Oh, then I will, then I
Yeah.
will just stick to English, and that's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Okay. Right. So that's the background, right? Now, the first question that comes to everybody's mind, I'm sure, is ki yaar, what is data analytics? Is it really as important or as central as as the popular media is trying to make it out to be, or is it hype? Right. So here is my answer to it. Big part of it is true. Some aspects of it are hyped up. So that's hopefully in the next whatever 30-40 minutes we will try to address which parts of it are hype, which parts of it are really important, and by the end of this conversation you should be able to see whether this problem or this particular approach you are taking, is it consistent with the fundamental tenets of data analytics or not. Okay, that's the intention. And what I'll do, Ganesh, is then if you're taking questions towards the end, I will wait till the end. Or if you think there is a question that that's very important, that may change the course of the conversation, you please interrupt me. Okay. So the fundamental shift that data analytics is bringing today is the following. Okay, it is helping you go from generic to specific, and as a result of that it is enabling a lot of granular services. Let me give you a couple of examples which hopefully you can all relate to, and then I'll give you a few more examples later on, and then we'll build on those those toward as we progress in the conversation. So let us say newspapers, right? I mean, the whole idea of physical newspapers is, yes, to disseminate information, to give out the news and all of that, but there is a substantial component of advertising also, right? There's a substantial component of reaching the right kind of customers who may trade some money for some service or some product, right? I mean, hopefully everybody knows this. No, this comes as a surprise to hopefully nobody, right? One example of this is every Sunday, at least, yeah, question. Okay, so every Sunday, whenever we used to get the physical newspaper, we used to get in Marathi what is called as a Puravni or a supplement in English, and then in that Puravni we used to have a pamphlet which had some advertising about something or the other, right? This is advertising, right? This is reaching out to your customers and so on. But what used to happen, let's say 15 years ago, 20 years ago, was this supplement used to have a very static, standard, general advertise. If the newspaper was Bombay edition, the advertise would be, let us say, something about the new vada pav stall that has been opened. I'm totally making this up, if let us say that, and I'm in Bangalore, I'm from Bangalore, so let us say if the newspaper was a Bangalore edition, then they would probably be less chances of the advertise being of a vada pav center, but maybe about a Visebele Bhat center or some such thing. So essentially what has happened is there has been some amount of personalization, some amount of specific approach has come in, which is based on a broad general geography. Bombay gets a particular kind of advertise. Bangalore gets a particular kind of advertise, maybe because that's the kind of taste of people who live there and so on. But now with data analytics, things can be made a lot more granular. What I mean by that is now you can figure out what is the taste of people who are living in a particular lane, in a particular city, in a particular geography, and so on, and then send those kind of very specific advertises to those people. So that's a big shift from doing what is called as spray and pray. That if you hear this word, that's what it means. That you just spray like you do Phawarni in your in your farms. Just spray the entire wavar. See, I thought of a few things in Marathi, so but I'll try to not use this. You just spray the whole farm and then pray that the insects will die and your plant will survive. Versus now you're doing a very specific thing where okay, exactly this is the plant that has a kind of a insect, and let me just give more insecticide here. This is the kind of plant that has no insects but less water, so let me try to give it water and so on. Okay, so that's sort of the specificness that is happening. Let me give you some very specific examples here. Initially, we all used to buy newspapers, so we would pay for the entire newspaper, right? Now you don't have to subscribe for the newspaper even on a daily basis. You can just subscribe to 10 different news feeds, each news feed for a particular topic. Newsfeed X for A, newsfeed B for technology, newsfeed C for sports, and so on. That is the power of data analytics. In fact, that has been possible only and only because of data analytics, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Second is, initially you would have to buy an entire house. Then there was some granularity in the sense you could rent a house, but now you can rent units of square footage for a particular period of time, and that time could be 1 hour to 2 hours to 1 day, and so on, right? Okay. Third is, initially you would have to buy a car. Now you can rent a car, or you can go all the way to the granularity of renting a seat in a car only from point A to point B. And that's also been possible because of data analytics, right? Not just the technology part, but the monetary, the business part also. And I'll talk a little bit about why the business is also making sense from providing these kind of granular services. See, because what would happen is, in principle, the newspaper guy could give you newspaper only on a daily basis and charge you only on a daily basis. कि भाई, today, he's charging you for Dainik Lokmat, tomorrow he will charge you for Dainik Jagran, then Samna, or whatever else. He could do that, but the business would stop him from doing that, because then it will not be profitable for him. He would have to carry the entire stack of all these 55 different newspapers, ask you which one you want, a lot of time wasted, a lot of effort wasted, and so on, right? So the technology part is also important, the business part is also important. Only one of the two is, if only one of the two was made possible, then you will not have the kind of big acceptance that you have today of data analytics. Both of these things have to go hand in hand. Technology has to be there, which enables this. Business also has to be there, which then helps make money out of it for somebody, and hence for everybody, right? Okay, the fourth example is that of computing services. Initially, you would have to buy a lot of computers, right? Or you would have to, over the last 5-6 years, you could rent some of these computing racks and so on. Now, today, what you can do is you can rent a computing unit only for a second. And people who are from the IT background would know that AWS Lambda service is one such example, where you can rent the compute unit only for the 30 seconds that it takes to run your Python script, and then automatically, the minute the Python script is has finished running and has sent the output to a particular location, the compute unit will stop and you will not be charged. So those are the kind of granularities that are being possible. Okay. Now, why is that possible today? All of this, I will give you two aspects of this, right? One is from a technology perspective, why is all of this possible? Second is from a business perspective, why is this possible? Okay. Now, from a technology perspective, what is happening is there are three major shifts that have happened. First one is there is growth in digital data, and Ganesh in the introduction talked a little bit about that. Now, that growth in digital data again is happening because of two things. One, just to give an example of what that growth in data is, US Library of Congress, which today is the biggest existing physical library, has 15 terabytes of data. Back in 2012, 2013, when Twitter was only sending text tweets, it was generating is the most important word here, generating 8 terabytes of data on a daily basis. So half of the library was generated in one day. And now, of course, you have multimedia and so on. So the amount of data that is getting generated is even higher. But why is that possible? That's possible again because it is easy to generate data. Everybody in this room, in this virtual room, has at least one smartphone, and of course they have maybe a laptop or a desktop. All of these are sources of generating data, but that's just one. The second is IoT, Internet of Things. When you and I are you and I are talking, a lot of the data is getting recorded through these, whatever tool we are using, right? If I was to mute, it will and keep talking, it will automatically tell me that, it'll give me a alert that you are talking, but looks like you are on mute. That is nothing but Internet of Things, where inanimate devices are communicating with each other and creating some new data, right? That is actually going to be, in the next 5 years, going to be the biggest source of data generation. We already have fridges talking to phones, phones talking to routers, routers talking to data servers, and so on. That's going to be a huge source of data generation, right? Then there is the other thing, which is of ease of disseminating this data. See, it's one thing to generate data, but you also want to have ways through which you can distribute this data. And thanks to the kind of telecom revolution that India is going through, started off in the 90s, but now in the last few years, a couple of players have made some drastic changes. As a result of that, it's easy to distribute the data that you've generated at large. So that's one technological component which is making all of this AI, ML, data science, data analytics a mainstay in the current situation. The second is that we now have access to frameworks which model this data. What I mean by that is, if I was to give you a particular string of data, you would, and let's say you were not from a computer background, today you have ways in which you can still go and figure out some details out of it. And I won't go into the details of that, because I know the crowd is the attendees are from a variety of different backgrounds. I'll just say that a lot of my time in the initial days when I joined IBM Research and Xerox Research went into understanding the kind of technological stack that they had built in-house. Whereas now, most of these things are open source. People who are from the IT background would know that Git repositories have just about every kind of basic problem that you need to solve, and so on. So that barrier of knowing deep computing expertise or having deep machine learning background is sort of reducing if you have to use basic models about data analysis. Okay, so that's the second fundamental shift that has happened, which is enabling how data analytics is becoming widespread. The third thing is easy access to computing power, and also making it relatively cheap. I'll talk about both of these aspects. The Apollo unit that landed on the moon had 0.001 gigahertz. That was the compute power that that core system had. Whereas the laptop that I'm using here to make this presentation is 16 gigahertz. So that should just tell you how drastically things have improved, right? And I'm not even talking about uh, industry grade compute power. This is just my laptop that I just carry around. That is 16 gigahertz, and contrast that with what happened just a few years ago. That's one aspect. The second more important aspect from a business perspective is you don't have to invest a lot of money to get access to this infrastructure. I talked about it a few seconds ago. The one of the four granular examples I gave was on this cloud. It is very easy these days to get access to massive amounts of cloud infrastructure without having to invest upfront in buying a whole lot of compute power, figuring out the real estate to keep it, figuring out ways to cool it down, and so on. You can just log into one of these. In fact, the first few hours or first few compute units are free of charge. So you can try out a lot of things just for free. All these three things technologically are coming together at around the last 3-4 years ago or so, and it's been ramping up quite rapidly ever since. As a result of this, data analytics is really taking off, and hence it's not a hype. It is here to stay. It is impacting just about every aspect of our business as well as our personal lives. Okay. Then let me give you a slight bit of detailed example of how this technological changes are also impacting from a business perspective. And I'll talk about that in detail using a financial sector example. So one of the things that that happens in financial sector, and thank you Ganesh for not talking about this. You know, as you were talking about financial examples in the beginning, I thought you may touch upon loan, but I'm glad you talked about fraud. Fraud also is a very important application of data analytics. So let's talk about loan processing from a financial sector perspective. What used to happen or what still happens uh, without doing data analytics. Typically what happens is, let's say you apply for some amount of loan. I won't talk about the amount because that's the business aspect, and we'll come to that in maybe 30 seconds. What would happen is the banking unit would say we will charge you 10,000 rupees upfront for processing the loan, right? Whether or not you get the loan is a different topic. We will still ask you to write a check for 5,000 to 10,000 rupees to process your check, and then, you know, if the loan gets approved, we will also fulfill it. Now what happens in those 5-10,000 rupees are these, mota speaking, these four things. A, document verification. Kire baba, this person's documents, are they all in one place or not? If the person is buying a house, are all the documents about registration, sale date, falana, dhimkana, X, Y, Z are all in place or not? If the person is buying a two-wheeler, whether the two-wheeler that is being purchased is coming from an authorized dealer or not? Is the two-wheeler actually going to be handled? When is it going to be registered, and so on? KYC, जो बंदा लोन ले रहा है, is that genuinely the person who he or she claims to be or not, right? So KYC is typically your know your customer, Aadhaar card, your PAN card, address proof, passport, X, Y, Z, ABC, all of those. Third is whether the person is able to earn the kind of money that will be needed to repay the loan. A. B, is the person really able to pay? Does the historic transactions, do the historic transactions tell us that this person has been able to pay or not, right? 3. 4, so these are the kind of things that would happen. Then the fourth thing would be customer segmentation. Okay, is this guy subprime, which means high risk, prime, which means okay, or super prime, which means really a cream kind of a person, very steady salary, doesn't has never missed a single credit card statement payment, has never never missed a EMI, very stellar history, married, has kids, and that kind of very stable family. Those will be super prime. But what happens is these are only 3 or 4 segmentations, right? And so the 10,000 rupees that you have spent here are going into these kind of processing. People who are from financial background would appreciate this, but even people who are not from a financial background hopefully can relate to this कि हाँ यार ये सब तो करना ही पड़ेगा अगर लोन ले रहा है, right? Now with data analytics, what can be done? With data analytics, you can do semi-automatic document verification. How? You scan your KYC documents, PAN card and Aadhaar card. Automatically, there is some, I won't go into technical details because the crowd is quite varied. There is some way of figuring out what is written, whether the name matches with the name in the application, the address matches with the address in the application, the date of birth matches. Then you have what are called as API calls to some of these central servers from where you can instantly figure out that ABC XYZ 1234 is the PAN card number associated with the name mentioned against the PAN card. Verification is done. In the pre-data analytics stage, you would have to do this manually, run from one place to the other, and so on. Second is, now because you have access to all the digital transactions that the person does today, most of us, very few of us have to pay through cash for everything. Most of us pay cash for X amount of transactions. The rest 100 minus X percentage of transactions are through credit card or direct debit or one of these wallets and so on. What happens because of this is you have left a digital trail. So somebody can analyze those digital trails and say, okay, this person on an average spends 500 rupees on a weekend, 200 rupees on a weekday. Okay, so I know that this person is somebody who likes to go out on weekends. On the other hand, this person spends 5,000 rupees on a week, but close to 500 rupees, only 500 rupees on a weekend. And that means that the person is more into the sales kind of a job, traveling a lot during the weekday, but relaxing over the weekend. What this helps you do is figure out a highly granular segmentation of the customer. Right? You can always say कि sir ये तो possible था पहले भी. I could do it here also. कि look at the person's resume, look at the person's manually look at the person's transactions and say, okay, this person is spending a lot of money in fuel. So that means he's probably in a field sales kind of a job. This person is spending a lot of money in eating in in restaurants, which means he is single or probably doesn't want to cook at home. All of these things are possible even in the pre-data analytics processes. But what happens is you will have to put a lot of people to manually look through this kind of data, analyze it, draw inferences. So you'll have to pay them, and it will take a long time to get to this end result. Clear? This is a very important distinction, that a lot of what I'm saying is in principle possible to do without doing data analytics, doing manual paper-based work, which is also basically data analytics, is not digital data. But the downside is it is not possible to do it in a cheaper and a quicker way, right? And that is where the business viability comes in. So now let's talk about this 10,000 rupees that you have written a check for to get a loan. That 10,000 rupees ka check makes sense only and only if you are asking for a loan which is a few lakh rupees, right? Because if you are getting, let's say, 10 lakh rupees loan, then you are like, okay, 10% is a very small percentage. I will give that as a fees. The banks are also okay because they, then they have some way of negotiating with the customer. कि नहीं यार 10,000 नहीं तो ठीक है, you give me 9,000 or some such, right? But now imagine bulk of the population does not ask for 10 lakh rupees loan every so often. Bulk of the population will very frequently ask for 50,000 rupees loan. और ये क्यों पूछेंगे? I'll give you an example. Both the parents are earning, but both the parents are lower middle class. Suddenly what has happened is उनके बच्चे का स्कूल फीस आ गया और स्कूल फीस है मान लीजिए 60,000 रुपए. Now what happens is 60,000 rupees, they don't have that kind of a money immediately saved up, and the school says कि नहीं अभी pay करना है. Then they need that loan, right? So they go to the bank. The bank guy says, give me 10,000 rupees. Obviously, these guys will be like, nahi yaar, that doesn't make sense. We will not give it to you. The bank cannot say, give me less money, because the bank also has to do all of these things, right? Even if the bank says, okay, you are a good friend, you are a good, long time customer, let me reduce the amount of money I'm asking you, and let's make it 5,000 rupees. And let's say the guys say, okay, that's possible, we will give you 5,000 rupees, but you decide on the loan quickly. That's the key thing here, quickly. The bank will still, in the pre-data analytics days or processes, would have to still manually do a lot of verifications, and they'll say you will take 15 days, 20 days. By then the school fees time is gone and it's of no value. That is where the business also is benefiting by doing data analytics. Because these processes are largely computer driven, you can do it quicker. Because a lot of these computing is made cheaper or granular, you can do a lot of this at a fraction of cost. In fact, today there are companies which will charge you only about 1,000 rupees, 500 to 1,000 rupees for this kind of processing. Obviously, they'll do it only for 20,000 to 50,000 rupee loans, and that is one big example of how financial sector is greatly getting transformed by data analytics, both from a technology perspective, because there is digital data, as well as from a business perspective. Because now what is happening is, even if the bank or a non-banking institution is taking only 500 rupees for processing, they can do this for many customers, and hence they make their margins by providing to volumes. Okay. Okay, so that's one example. Let me give you very quick. I won't go into details of all of these kind of examples in the next sectors, but I'll just tell you two or three. So transportation. What's happening here is, again, to the idea of providing granularity, you can predict the demand. Like if there is an IPL match happening in Bangalore or Bombay or wherever else, you can look at largely semi-automatically look at what kind of traffic was there in the last 5 IPL matches, incorporate some extra things saying, oh, but that match was between Bombay and Hyderabad, and hence the Bombay traffic was probably more because home team and so on. Today it's Hyderabad versus Chennai, so the traffic may go down. You have systematic ways of bringing in those aspects. You can then do a good amount of prediction. That's technologically possible. Business wise, what is possible? Business wise, if I am from Bombay, I'm going to Wankhede Stadium to watch a match. I won't, if I'm paying, let's say 15,000 rupees for the ticket, I won't mind paying 500 rupees more if the ticket provider says, sir, आप 15,000 रुपए दे रहे हो 3 टिकट्स के लिए, 500 रुपए और दे दो, मैं आपको, आप जिस एरिया से आ रहे हो उसके पास का जो पार्किंग लॉट है वहां पर मैं आपको पार्किंग दे दूंगा. What a big convenience, right? Wankhede, I've never been to Wankhede Stadium, but I'm assuming it's oval or round in shape, and so there's parking going to be all over the place. People who are coming from the east side would prefer to park on the east side. People coming from the west would prefer to park on the west side, because getting in is easy, getting out is easy. Paying 500 rupees extra for that user convenience is not a problem. Imagine if everybody does this. What has happened here is the technology has made it possible to provide this kind of a solution. There is a very tangible user convenience that the user has gotten out of it, and hence he or she won't mind paying that extra few hundred rupees, right? So that's, and because this is happening at scale, that small amount of 500 rupees is actually going to scale up to a big value. Okay, so that's the one good example of transportation. The reason I wanted to give you guys this example is, most of the times when people talk about use cases of data analytics, they say people who bought beer also bought diaper, people who bought tops, shirts from a website will also want to buy pants. These things are very obvious, right? I mean, if I bought a shirt, there's a very high chance that I want to buy a pant also. But and so those examples are very good, no doubt about it. But I also wanted to give you a little deeper level understanding of where truly data analytics is going to bring in fundamental shifts. Because from what I understand from Ganesh, there may be a lot of people here who may be thinking of deep diving into data analytics from a business perspective also. So please think about these aspects. Yeah. Second one is retail or e-commerce. Here, the user can pay a few rupees extra for, again, a user convenience or access to wider variety of products. When I go shopping, a lot of the times my family is not satisfied with the kind of choices that we see in the shop, right? Because we are limited by the capacity of the physical shop and so on. But now when you go to a online shop, you are limited by the kind of things that you search for, right? And that's where data analytics becomes very important. If I give a vague term like summary shirts, I want the system to automatically understand that when the person is saying summary, it means right away it is not full sleeves, or there's a high chance it is not full sleeves. There's an extremely high chance that it is not woolen or any other thick clothes. All of this understanding has to happen in the background. A aha moment will happen if automatically the system says, you know what, this is Om Deshmukh who is logged in. I know his size is, whatever, 38, 42. Let me just show him shirts in that range. Or if I know that Om never buys shirts for himself, on this website, he always buys it for his kid, and his kid is in 10th class, so let me show shirts, which are matching to that size. This kind of a thing is truly the power of data analytics. But now Om here in this case is willing to pay a little more money because Om is in hurry and he's found the right shirt that he wants to buy. Done, right? So businesses also happen. There's some extra amount of money or one deal that has been closed, and this has been possible because of the analytics that happen. Third, this is an example that Ganesh and I talked a little bit about, which is in elections. Now, obviously, there's a lot of stories about how variety of data analytics things are being used in national level elections, be it this country or that country or so on. But I also wanted to tell you a slightly different aspect about how data analytics can be used in the elections. Typically what happens is whoever is getting elected, this need not be the mainstream politics. This could be office elections or panchayat not panchayat, but any other governing body elections. Typically what happens is during the time of elections is when the issues are talked about, and there's higher chance that the issues will get addressed and so on. What data analytics can do is figure out the demographic that a particular issue is more important to, and then over a period of time keep addressing these issues so that by the time the elections come, let's say it's some Janta Sahkari or some such Sakhar Karkhana kind of a election, then instead of just addressing the issue at that particular point, you can address the issues over a period of time. Now, why couldn't you do this earlier? You couldn't do it earlier because the governing bodies would have 100 other things to do. They wouldn't have the time to look at each and every aspect. But now, because of seamless data collection and so on, it's relatively easy to do these kind of things, figure out what exactly is causing the issue and so on. Okay. Right. Ganesh, this is a good place to pause and see if there is any question, because the next what I'm going to do is talk about what exactly does it mean to be doing artificial intelligence and so on. So Ganesh, if there are no questions, I'll move on, but I'll give you maybe 5 seconds to respond.
Yeah, there are some questions. We can take one or two.
Okay, sure, go on, tell me.
Yeah. First is from Vinayak D. Data analytics is one part, but how you can check the chat window. There are questions.
Oh,
Like the first question is data analytics is one part, but how it's been to integrated to generate value to business. Can you please give some example with underpinning technologies used?
right. So this is a 343 question, and now it's 4 o'clock, and I think I talked about some of it while after the question was typed. I did not talk
Yeah.
about the technologies that were being used, so I'll talk a little bit about that. Uh, the technologies are a wide variety of such technologies. One is the simplest that hopefully everybody can appreciate is database. What used to happen in the old days, or even happens now, even now, is when you go to, let's say, a bank example again, the in let's say a very remote non-digitized bank, which is very hard to find these days, but let's say there is one such bank, the database there is a huge ledger, a huge physical notebook in which there is one row for every person, right? Ganesh Patil, okay, so you have to find where, okay, G, and then you go to G, and then you find and get to the details. Om Deshmukh, okay, O, if you go where is O in that big ledger, and then find where is Om and so on. That's a physical database. Today, what is happening is there is a huge amount of research going on, as well as productization happening of newer ways in which databases are being proposed, be it columnar databases or NoSQL databases, big databases where things are sharded and kept in different locations and so on. So that's one technology. Quite a lot of it is happening. I won't go in the details again, but database is one, processing is other, storage is the third, access to data, modeling techniques, and so on. Okay, so if you have text, there is a very different way of modeling. If you have images, there's a different way of modeling and so on. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll probably just take one question and go to the next one.
Yeah.
Okay,
Next
so let's
question.
go to the next topic, which is,
All right. All right. Om. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, because we only have 15 minutes, right? I mean, do we have a hard stop? I'm guessing we have a hard stop at 4:15, right? Ganesh?
Yes.
Yeah,
We have
yeah. Okay,
till 4:15.
right. So what I will do is
But we
very
can extend
quickly
it if
tell.
required. We can extend it to 10 to 15 minutes more. Yeah.
Okay, let's see if the people may have questions, and so I will try to at least go through everything quickly. Again, the idea is, now what I will do is talk about what exactly is artificial intelligence. Can we can we teach a machine intelligence, and if we teach the machine intelligence, can we evaluate how intelligent the machine has become? These are the three topics we will cover, and then we will stop after that. Okay, so what is artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence, I want to contrast it with memorization. Okay, a lot of the times today what happens is intelligence is getting confused with memorization. Same story about what used to happen in our classrooms also. याद करो, एग्जाम में जाओ, सवाल पता है, रट्टा करके बोल दो, that's it, that is intelligent. But truly the intelligence is not about remembering or memorization. It is about applying what you have learned. First of all, it is to learn, and then to apply what you have learned to a new kind of problem, right? So let us see very quickly. This is not intelligence, it is an intelligent kid. This is not intelligence of distinguishing a man from a woman, it is slightly more intelligent kid. Happy to sad, again, different kind of intelligence. You need to have not just the figuring out the person's facial expressions, but also interpreting them, and that's emotional intelligence. Now this question of boiling point of water, knowing this or not is not as much intelligence as it is memorization. But so that's the answer. But saying it depends is actually quite a lot of, a little more advanced intelligence, because now you can say, it depends on what is the impurity, it depends on the altitude that you are at, XYZ, and so on, right? So it is some amount of domain expertise. Domain expertise is just a sophisticated way of saying memorization, and some amount of intelligence. This piece, whether a person will click on my ad or not, if you are able to do this task, is that intelligent? Well, somebody who's really very intelligent in literature, or very very good in music, and hence is intelligent, may or may not have an answer to this. So you cannot say that person is not intelligent. Again, it depends on what is called as domain expertise, as well as some amount of intelligence. So now let's look at some of the truly intelligent jobs. And again, I'll just go through one, which is collect trash and throw it in a dustbin. This is intelligent. Anybody who can do this is reasonably speaking intelligent, because the person has to dynamically figure out what is trash, whether something lying on a floor is trash or not. If you make a rule that that is on a floor is trash, you may end up losing your phone, or losing your wallet, or someday maybe you left your laptop on the floor and it's gone. On the other hand, if something, I do this very often, I leave half an apple on my table and it's rotting. If you leave it on the table for a long time, it's actually trash before it starts rotting. But if you apply a rule that says everything on a table is of value, then this will never be classified as trash. And so the person has to be intelligent to look at these things, and at some point say that the apple was not trash till half an hour ago, but now it's getting stale, and so it's trash. Similarly, where is the trash can, right? Where is the dustbin? You have to figure out with some intelligence that this is a dustbin, and hence everything goes in it, but you have to also clean around the dustbin, and so on. So these are intelligent tasks. Okay, teaching machine to do this is what is happening today. Teaching a machine to do this is what is beginning to happen now. A good example of that is cars which are auto driven, and so on. Those are truly intelligent jobs, and there is quite a lot of advancement that is happening in those areas. So machine learning hasn't reached a stage, and that's where the hype part comes in, where a lot of sci-fi kind of talks are coming in, which say that truly superhuman, super intelligent systems will someday overpower humans and do this and that. It may happen, but it's a distant future. It's not happening anytime soon, right? And that's the hype part of it. What I talked about so far is really the reality. Okay, and I've given some practical examples, but we won't go through it now. Right now, I'm going to skip through this slide of challenges of teaching, I'll come to what does it mean to be teaching intelligence, right? So now we've talked about what is intelligence, what is the artificial part of it, where machines are able to navigate through a car, clean a room, and uh, throw the uh, throw the trash in a dustbin and so on. Let us now see what are the kind of things that are needed to teach intelligence. Largely, there are two things needed, right? One is you need textbooks through which the teaching can be done. And second is you need to have evaluations, which will then evaluate whether the person, or in this case, the machines, have learned or not. Clear? These are the, largely speaking, these are the two aspects. And so we'll spend the next 5-10 minutes on that, and then we'll end the topic. Now, textbooks, when you were learning maths in your classrooms, you had a particular textbook. In my case, there was a book by Gambhir, or there was a book by Krishnamurti or some such, which had linear algebra, right? The beauty was that that same textbook was given to every student. The teacher had the same book. Evaluation questions were also coming from the same textbook. So there was uniformity of the content that was given in the textbooks. Now let's see how that happens in the case of machines. Let us say the problem here is to distinguish red from green. You want to train image processing software which will detect whether the light that you see in the traffic light, the color that you see in the traffic light, is red or green. What do you need first? You first need lots and lots of data which is labeled with different shades of red color, different shades of green color, right? So you need 1,000 such examples. Now everybody who's in this talk will be able to distinguish between the red color and the green color very easily, right? There's no confusion. Hopefully everybody will agree that the top one is red, everybody will agree that the bottom one is green. If I give this data to a machine, the machine will then relatively easily learn that what is red and what is green. But the real world problems are never this simple. There could be a light reflecting on the red traffic signal. There could be, it could be late night, it could be early morning, it could be raining, it could be foggy, so on and on. So the true problem is this: you have the rainbow colors, and now what I want to do is distinguish between, let us say, orange and dark yellow, right? Now, how many of you in this room can agree that this is not orange but dark yellow? I bet if I was to call each one of you individually, and ask you, several of you will say, "Nee, Om, this is probably dark yellow." Others will say, "No, no, no, this is probably orange." Or others will say, "No, this is dark yellow and this is light yellow." Right? And so when this kind of a confusion happens among us who are going to teach the machine itself is not going to be trained properly. And that's where human calibration is very important. What I mean by that is, in this example of, let us say, what is trash, at what point is the apple that is on the table trash and at what point it is not. You need to have some human calibration that says, Kiar, if somebody has bitten into it, then probably keep it only for 1 hour. But if it's a fresh apple, nobody has taken a bite out of it, probably keep it for 2 days. That kind of human calibration is very difficult to do, and that's one big challenge in terms of why machine learning hasn't taken off as sci-fi movies and others talk about. Okay, so subjectivity is a big problem. Systems will only be as accurate as the human labels that are being provided. So what I always encourage people who are coming from a technical background is to learn what are the systematic ways in which you can evaluate the consistency of the human data, and there are techniques to do that. People who are coming from a management side of the world, what I encourage them to do is figure out whether it is possible to get such kind of a data which is consistent across humans. So for example, whether this person should be given a loan or not, it's very easy to get that kind of a data in a consistent way. You get 10 different loan approving managers. They will, if 8 of them agree, 2 of them don't agree to give the loan, that's fine. 80% chance is actually a good thing. But if 5 of them say yes, give, 5 of them say no, don't give, then the problem is difficult to be solved. And then from a business perspective itself, it's probably not worth starting off. Okay, again, I'm rushing through this, but hopefully this is clear to you all that the first part of teaching intelligence is textbooks, and when it comes to teaching machines, the textbooks are provided by humans, and hence humans have to be consistent. The second part is of grading the system. See, how did you and I learn? We did not wait for the final exam to learn our mistakes. We used to have what are called as monthly exams, right? Um, Ghatak Chachni or some such that we used to have in Marathi, right? So what used to happen was that was a feedback loop. Our teacher would give us a feedback immediately at the end of the month's exam and say, "Yaar, Om, you made a mistake here. Ganesh, you got this right." And then that way we would learn and be better prepared for the final exam, right? That has to be done very systematically, even in machines. So I'm giving you just one example here. Let us say the machine has to distinguish between a cat and a dog and a jaguar. And let us say these two look very similar, right? But actually what I have done is I have said the distance between a mistake between a cat and a jaguar is the same as the distance between a dog and a cat. And hence what the person feels now is, yeah, if I don't get this answer right, it's okay if I get this other answer right, because there is not much of a penalty. Now where is the problem? The problem comes in defining the end goal. If my end goal is to go pat the animal, right, like a domestic animal, I want to go pat the animal, then in that case, making a mistake between a dog and a cat is not very expensive. But making the mistake of confusing a cat with a jaguar is a huge mistake. One will just purr, the other one may just kill you off, right? So hence the way you penalize has to be different. Versus, let us say, a biological person, a person who is in the biological field is trying to distinguish the cat family from the dog family. In that case, making this mistake is not a big problem, but making this mistake of confusing a cat with a dog is a much bigger problem, right? And hence, when we are evaluating machines or when we are training the machines, obviously the machines are getting trained based on the penalization that you're providing. You need to have the right kind of penalization. So if you're doing a domestic versus wild animal distinction, you really have to move the jaguar very far from the cat and the dog, and but keep the cat and the dog close to each other. Clear? Okay, so that's the second aspect. I'm going to skip through this in the interest of time, but this is just an aspect of how the end-to-end system matters and not just data analytics. I'm going to okay. I'm going to actually talk about this aspect, which is because hopefully there are. I'm guessing there are a lot of young professionals who want to know कि यार data analytics में career कहाँ बना सकते हैं. There are a variety of different things that you have to do in data analytics. From a business side, if you're from an MBA or non-IT related engineering background or just don't like coding or so on, you can get into the business aspects, which is the data available? Is the problem the right problem to be solved from a data analytics perspective or not? If you have some amount of engineering background, some amount of coding background, you can get into the data capture, data storage side. If you have a lot of mathematical background, then you can get into data retrieval, which needs quick operations, and so again this needs a lot of engineering also. And then if you have really mastered a lot of the basics of data modeling and so on, then obviously you can get into data processing, where you connect the dots and say, what does it mean to say that this is a cat versus this is a dog, and so on. So there are a variety of these different kinds of problems that can be solved. Data analytics is not just for engineers, definitely not just for computer science engineers. There is one aspect of it which needs engineering. Within that, there is one aspect which needs computer science kind of knowledge of data structures and so on. But there are a variety of other things which are just as important or maybe even more important, which need management background, like the first one, translating business to data problem, and so on, right? So there's a wide spectrum of problems that need to be solved, and there are a wide spectrum of skills that are needed to be able to address those issues. Okay. 3 seconds of what we do. We hold weekly uh, weekly podcasts on different topics. This week, this Sunday, tomorrow, we have a talk on productionizing data science, which means you've built a prototype, but now how do you make it into a product? Hiten Patel, he's part of our team in Yardley. I'm sure Ganesh remembers him. He's now heading the one of the engineering teams in Tesco, so he's going to be talking about that. Pranav is the host. We have different topics. The next one will be cyber security, which is after 6th September, 13th September. We also, from a tilde hat perspective, from a technical perspective, we are building machine learning driven career progression systems, and we are looking for beta testers who can test it and provide feedback. Would love for you guys to sign up, and provide your feedback. Okay, that I know I have sort of overshot by a couple of minutes, but hopefully this was all interesting and informative. With that, let me stop. Ganesh, are there any questions?
Yeah, we have some questions, but before that, I would like to encourage all to just go to Tilde Hat website and attend those sessions. Hiten Patel is really very well experienced professional in big data engineering, and if you are interested in that, you should join that event. In addition to that, I would like to say a few lines about Tilde. There is a quote on their site: Steve Jobs is only one, but we have many, many, many jobs. So if you are looking for job, you should visit that website, sure, for sure.
Right,
Uh,
right. Oh, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great,
Okay.
great, Ganesh.
I have shortlisted two questions. We will not take much of your time.
Sure,
Though, so
sure.
first question is, it's from Imran Patharwat, and
Mhm.
he want to know, does investing he is 35 now, and he want to know, if I invest time in learning data science, will it be usable in coming 5 to 10 years?
Right. So hey, Imran. Okay. It doesn't matter what your age is. So that's the first answer. And it definitely is going to be useful for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years for sure. A lot of things are, going to move towards the data driven way of doing things. And even a lot of these big giant simulations where you would have physical aircrafts do the simulations, right? A lot of mechanical structures would be built, and then you would do some crash testing and so on. All of that is also getting into software driven testings. And I'm just giving that as an extreme example of how a lot of things are getting into the digital world. Anytime anything happens in the digital world, it will leave a trail. And the data analytics is nothing but processing that digital trail to come up with some insights that somebody will find value in. Right. So Imran, to your question, yes, absolutely, you should. The the longer answer would be, depending on what your background is, what your interests are, what your horizon is, in terms of time investment and returns, the exact field that you would choose will be different.
Yeah. The next question, thanks, Om. Next question is, I have collected it from multiple audiences. Like, if
Mhm.
someone is beginner for data science, like he may be third year engineering student, or he has done his bachelor's in some other degree, not non CS or non IT. So where should he or she start from? And there are some online courses like Upgrad and Coursera, but is it really worth it to invest money and time there? That's
Right.
his question.
Okay, great. And that is where I'll plug Tilda had a little bit. Again, I'm not advertising. This is just a knowledge dissemination session. And I love, by the way, just talking about data science. But this is a very important point that you've raised, Ganesh. See, what happens is, a lot of the time the end result is what is in mind. The input is not taken into consideration. And that's the question that I think the person was asking. Okay, are X, Y, and Z are offering courses, should we take them or not? Absolutely, you should take the course, but which one to take is a big problem, right? And that's where your input comes in, which is key. I am, like Imran was asking earlier, I am 35. Okay, then the kind of courses that you will do different. I am a third year student, then the courses are different. Within third year, if you are from a BE background, the courses will be different versus you are from, let's say, BCom background. Within the BE itself, depending on whether you have some amount of coding experience or not, the answer will be different. Within the I don't mean to sort of do this peeling of the onion, but that's just a fact of life. Within that coding aspect, do you really enjoy coding? If so, what is your level of comfort in coding? If you do not enjoy but your comfort is high and you want to learn, then there's a different aspect that you can learn. So it really depends on uh, what are your aspirations. Yes, A, of course, that's very important, but B, what is also important is what are the kind of skills that you have today, what is the kind of effort that you are willing to put to get to the result, and based on that you will definitely be able to choose a particular topic to look at. Just about every course that I have come across is good. um, yeah, so definitely you should figure out which aspect is important for you. But because many of these courses, well, all of these courses demand a certain amount of time, and some of them demand a certain amount of money from your side. Both of these, once gone, is difficult to come to get it back. Time, of course, is not possible. uh, that is where I would suggest you spend some time talking about, discussing with your friends. Praveen probably is a good person to reach out to figure out, which aspect really makes sense for you. Does that answer the question, Ganesh, or do you have a follow up, or does the person have a follow up?
No, it's sufficient, Om. Yeah.
Okay.
All right then. Thanks for your time. Thanks all for joining this webinar. And
Okay, great.
we would like to, yeah, we would like to, if you have any other questions, you can connect on LinkedIn, or you can forward questions to me. Yeah. And we are very glad to have you on our JNV Kolhapur Alumni Association Career Guidance series. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you. I enjoyed talking to you guys. Wonderful questions. Please do connect with me separately, if there are any other questions. Okay, guys. Huh?
All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.